before we actually get started, I know you, like on the economy update yesterday, you were mentioning you're going to be glued to the TV. So have you noticed anything interesting happening from that?
Mate, it fizzled out. It just went, basically went nowhere. The Senate race is probably going to end up 50-50, so it's going to end up the same. The governor races went surprisingly well, and the lower house, or the lower house, that the House is going to flip to Republican. They'll probably get 222 seats, which is what the Democrats have now. So a majority of 5. But any majority is a majority. There's been some voting irregularity already come out in places like Arizona, which was to be expected, because Arizona was one of those states that, basically entrenched stupid laws. Same with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So it's going to be interesting. The final results will take another couple of days. But it wasn't a massive slide in as the Trump camp would want. Still a lot of support, though, there for the conservative Trump. So what, if you start breaking down the numbers, there is still a lot of support for America First. And that sort of ideology, which is good. But it's just not transforming into seats in the Senate. So, and that's, that is what it is. This will be the biggest spending election ever. Over $10 billion was spent on election ads and campaigning during this campaign. So it'd be interesting to see what the next lot of midterms do. I think the last midterms was around $6.5 billion. This time's $10 billion. That's just a phenomenal amount of money. Like a Senate to actually run a Senate campaign and win, you're pretty much you need to raise 50 to 60 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of fundraisers and a lot of dinners. So
yeah, I can imagine. Well, anyway, yeah, I was just interested to hear that because you were sharing a bit about it yesterday, but I'm looking forward to hearing more details on the next economy update, as I'm sure everyone else is. But anyway, without further ado, we'll get into the topic of tonight. So pretty much like the title says, basically I'll share a little bit of background why we decided to start this. I'm sure, like looking at all the names of people that's attending today, I know there's a lot of familiar names. Those of you that tune into our economy updates, that's actually where the idea came from, because we briefly mentioned as a passing comment the importance of being self-sufficient, and just mentioned as an idea of who would be interested in listening to something like that. We got a lot of interest, and so here we are. We just decided to do that, get Stephen's take on it. I've been looking forward to this last 2 weeks, as I'm sure everyone else has. We've got a few questions prepared. So basically, to give an outline of how this is going to work, first, we're going to ask a few questions to Stephen around the background of self-sufficiency, which say more like the theory behind self-sufficiency of why it's important for the times today, some basic tips of how to get started and like what that actually looks like. So the first, I would probably roughly 30 minutes or so will be more focused around the background of it. And then the last 30 minutes or so will be focused around practical steps, training, where should you start and stuff like that. So as we go along, formulate as many questions as we can, because my aim with this interview will be to keep it to around 45 minutes to an hour of asking questions, asking Stephen my own questions. Then I would like to put aside 15 to 20 minutes asking Stephen questions from you guys to make sure you guys obviously get what you came here for. So as we go along, just prepare as many questions as you can for Stephen. I'm sure would love to answer all of them, but yeah, give Stephen your best and ask him as many questions as you can. You may as well make the most of it while we've got his time here, because yeah, he's really knowledgeable, as we all know. So without further ado, we'll get started. I've got a few questions here for you, Stephen, but basically, the first thing I wanted to ask you before we go more into the practical stuff, like I mentioned, was what does self-sufficiency actually mean? Because we've talked about it for a while. People talk about self-sufficiency, but if you had to break that down, what does it actually mean to be self-sufficient?
Yeah. So, and that's a really good question and good point. And a lot of people, when they think self-sufficiency, they just think in one area. And it could be one area like food or energy or whatever it is. But actually, it's more of a holistic approach to how you live than it is a plan B or an escape route. I during my military time and all that sort of stuff, I got to hang around with some very interesting prepper types, you know, who had the big bunkers and, you know, grew their own food and pickled their own food and hunted and did all their own bits and pieces. And that was a really interesting eye-opener. Most of these guys were South African or Americans that lived here in Australia or in the US. And when you actually start getting into that ground, some of them go way overboard. You know, they go way into the, you know, nuclear holocaust world and all this sort of stuff, and everything's doomed. But I brought it back to making sure that you've got multiple options for everything that you do in your everyday life. So we're not just talking about where to get food or where to get clothes. It's actually something that's more holistic. So we're talking about not relying on the government system for pretty much anything at some point in time. It doesn't mean you don't have to use the services. It just means that you're not fully reliant on it. So self-sufficiency, as it says on the tin, is you're reliant on yourself to make yourself. So it's actually the underlying premise of sovereignty. So things that I look at is, and it's easier in today's world to do some of this stuff, you know, do you have the option to grow your own food? Do you know where to go to farmers markets and local stuff? Do you live in a community that is connected? You know, are you in a community that can work together or may not work together? You know, can you fix that? Do you have secure sources of non-water, energy for cooking and so forth? Do you have all the different plans? If there's a bushfire, you know, that's going to destroy your place and you got everything in that, but what's your escape route? Right? If there is a war, how do you get out? Where do you go? Have you identified that, you know, tropical island in the middle of nowhere that you can go and you can live there and live out the storm? You know, think of Ukraine at the moment, right? Most of the people there end up in refugee camps and stuff because they aren't prepared and do not know escape routes, do not have a backup, you know, to even get to the border to get over into somewhere else. And in the Ukraine, it's easy. They've got borders all around it, you know, so you can go somewhere, get the Black Sea, you can go across it. Most people think that the government will save it. So my number one thing when I've started looking at self-sufficiency, and I've really started looking at it more in the last few years, is that do I have options for what I'm doing? Right. At the moment, I don't have a permanent place of residence here in Australia, but I have a permanent place of residence overseas. That has some self-sufficiency built into it, but because I'm not there, that's not useful to me. So now I know, you know, that I know if I drive north, I can get here. I know if I go to this community, it's going to be more self-sufficient than staying in the centre of Brisbane. You know? So just things like that, knowing where to get fuel, knowing that, you know, if you're trying to get out of town, a truck stop is more likely to have fuel than just a general petrol station, for instance, because, you know, the trucking fleets will make sure that where they get their fuel from has fuel to keep the trucks moving and so forth. Also know where the military stop for fuel on their routes. So for instance, between Brisbane and Shoalwater Bay in north of Rockhampton, or just out of Rockhampton, there are certain places where the army will stop and fuel up, right? So some of those places have a strategic reserve built in. Most people don't know, but they do. And you'll see when you're driving around, there is, especially if it's a route to a training ground or a route to a base or something like that. I'm not sure what they all are, but every now and then you'll see some tags on trees or on posts, you know, and it'll be numbers and it'll be red or green or orange or something. And you look at it and go, well, that doesn't make sense. But what it is, it's actually army markets. So the army know, you know, how much it is. And one of the guys that I know, he was an ex-transport guy, and he said, yeah, look out for these sort of things. So knowing where that sort of stuff is. So it's more than just the practical side, it's the knowledge side as well. And I would say the knowledge side is as important, if not more important, than actually the practical doing it. So things like being able to pitch a tent, you know, things like being able to start a fire, things like, you know, how do you dry clothes with dew and all that sort of stuff if you need to, how to read a map, right? So some of the basic stuff that you learn in Scouts and all that sort of stuff come into this. But it's a really holistic approach to everything that you do in your life. Oh, excuse me. It must be money coming.
Well, yeah, so very much if I'm understanding you correctly, if you had to simplify that, it's basically similar to how we describe sovereignty. It's basically just having options and a backup plan if stuff go wrong, like with governments and just personal stuff. You always have backups and you understand that. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah. Look, it's probably the first stage in a holistic sovereignty plan, right? So we talk about sovereignty from the financial perspective and from the second residencies, the international perspective. This is probably more the self-sufficiency part is, you know, making sure that you're generating your own money, you have cash. A simple example, traveling and the ATMs were out in America when New York was in the full blackout. I had cash and gold on me. So I could get around when the ATM machines weren't working. Right? So I had options then. I could get out of the place where a lot of people couldn't. Know where things like, and farmers do this the best, is have reserves of fuel that are manually pumped, not electrically pumped, because the pumps are out. You know, and some of the older service stations in the Bronx and that were able to use diesel generators to power their fuel pumps, and that for people where some of the newer ones didn't have that option to be able to plug into a second source of energy. So, yeah, it is definitely the more holistic view of what we talk about as sovereignty.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's just basically being able to be in control of everything in your life holistically and financially, and just have backup plans for worst case scenario and all that. That makes sense. So yeah, that was my first question. Hopefully that gives everyone an idea of self-sufficiency. And like I said, if you do have any questions come up as we go, just put it in the Q&A box rather than the chat, because sometimes if a lot of people are typing in the chat, it can get lost. So just put it in the Q&A box and we can get to it when we can. So the next question I have for you, Stephen, I mean, we all probably have an idea of this question, like everyone in their own minds can make up their own reason, but in your own perspective, Stephen, based on what we've been discussing in the economy updates, based on what's happening around the world, why is it important to be self-sufficient in today's economy and today's world?
Oh, man, where to start? So with what's happening going on in the world, so you got food shortages, so you need to make sure you've got an alternate supply of food. You know, if your only supply of food is a restaurant or Woolworths, you're going to be in trouble, all right? You need to know where the farmers markets are. You need to know where to get a supply of food. So because shortages, we're seeing shortages, you know, run out of toilet paper. Well, what do you use if you don't have toilet paper? You know, stick a hose up your ass or something. You know, there's always options. The Three Shells, if anyone knows that movie, you know, the Deconstruction Men or whatever, the Demolition Men. So make sure you've always got options. We're heading into uncertain times. So making sure that you have alternate means of payment. They're going to try and force everyone to use digital, right? But at the same time, we're heading in towards energy insecurity. So if everything's a digital payment and you've got energy insecurity where there could be blackouts, you're going to have problems paying. And let me tell you, if a shopkeeper, right, or someone who wants to sell some goods and their ATM or their EFTPOS machine and that's down, they will soon take cash. Trust me, right? And or they'll take you, you'll be able to go to a jeweler and get some gold coins and split it up. They will take it, when there is no other options. So we've got government instability, and we're going to have a lot of job layoffs. Have a look at the tech sector at the moment. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, Snap, TikTok, WhatsApp, Microsoft, Gojek in Singapore. Most of the banks are all in the last 10 days have announced layoffs. So if you're working for a major corporation, expect that there's going to be layoffs in your organization. So what do you do then? We're supposed to be in an era where there is more jobs than can be filled. But are you willing to move? Do you have the option to move with the housing shortage? So do you have that option of looking at another resource? God, what else is there happening at the moment? The food shortages, housing shortages, fuel shortages. There's going to be upset in employment. So you're going to have to move, upset in food, civil unrest, or just general go back to lockdowns, right? The guys that survived in Victoria the best were the friends of mine that had their own farms. They lived in the city, and as soon as lockdown came, they jumped in the car, went straight to the farm, and then just twaddled around on their farm and did whatever they want, right? They were outside all the time. No one come to the farm to check that if they're wearing masks or they were roaming around 5 kilometres. One guy said, 5 kilometres, I don't even get to my boundary, So, it's an amazing thing. But that's because he had options, So that's what you need to keep in mind. Alternative means of transport. Do you have a friend that's got a plane? During COVID and the border closures, I can tell you now, people with their own planes, they were flying everywhere, right? They weren't going to the big cities. They were still doing their business. They were still going around. They were crossing borders, going backwards and forwards, and just turn off the transponder, fly low, and away you go. That was happening all the time, right? The other thing is whatever you do, if you can, make sure you're essential. So part of self-sufficiency is making sure that you're in the hierarchy enough that you become essential. And we say this in some of the other programs we do, politics actually matters, right? And in these times of political instability and all that sort of stuff, it may be a necessity that you need to know politicians. You need to be friendly with them. You need to be putting money in their back pocket, because that could be your ticket out of somewhere. Just have a look at the WA closures with Twiggy Forrest and all the other billionaires and that were going backwards and forwards over the WA border. It was all because, they were putting money in McGowan's pockets when it comes to election time. They were essential people. Twiggy wasn't essential, but he was flying in and out of the country as if it was bloody, holiday time in Ibiza. Backwards and forwards like a yo-yo. And all the top guys were. And that's because of the influence they've got at the top level. So things like that. And that's why, and especially now, we are in times like the world's totally changed. If you think the world is the same as what it was 2 years ago, man, please, turn off here and go back to bed, because, man, you're living under a rock. The world has changed, and you now need to be looking and thinking differently from the 99%, right? The 1% that everyone talks about is what you want to be. but it's not necessarily the 1%, global elites. It's the 1% that are going to survive, and that sort of stuff. If you don't know how to shoot, maybe it's a good time to go and join a gun club. Learn the basics of shooting, because if there is a civil war or there is an invasion of some time, you might have to pick up an arms. I can't remember who said it, was it Jefferson or one of the American presidents. Actually, that was in his speech. We need to pick up arms at some point in time to defend freedom. That's probably going to the nth degree, but there is different degrees in that. The other thing is education. How are you training? How are you letting your kids get taught? Homeschooling is actually on the rise, and homeschooling is growing at a faster rate. With the way that our education system's in massive, fast decline, I think Afghanistan now has a better education system than Australia. That homeschool, bring other subjects in, bring tutors in, get like-minded families together, and teach your kids things. Don't let your kids just play on PlayStations and all that sort of stuff. Get out and about. Go camping in the backyard. Turn the electricity off. So one of the things that I can't remember whose place I was staying. There was a guy over in WA. Where do you live? Jurien Bay? No, further north. Somewhere up that way anyway. Exmouth. And he said to us, one of the drills that their family drills, they turn the power off for the weekend. So can you survive over a weekend with no power? So train yourself, educate yourself, read books, learn how to start fires. This simple thing, learn how to start fires. We're going to see people in Europe this winter freeze to death because they can't access the gas and oil heaters because they either can't afford it or can't get it. And they don't know how to light a wood stove. So some of the guys, the homesteading guys in the US, especially, and some of the homesteading guys here in Australia, as well as gas and electric stoves, they have wood stoves, and wood stoves can basically heat your home, heat your water, and cook your food. They're very, very robust bits of, big cast iron, but they're very handy. So.
Yeah, those are some really good points. And Nadine just made a comment about joining a shooting club that she's actually thinking about. She was just thought about joining a shooting club this week. So maybe that's your sign.
100%. Yeah, go do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, you can see that it's kind of like iron body training is what you're saying, where you're conditioning yourself. Instead of conditioning your body to be hit, you're conditioning your mentality and your lifestyle to kind of slowly and gradually be able to withstand that and be able to take that. So it's kind of like training your body to be able to take a hit. You're training your mind and your lifestyle to be able to take a hit and getting used to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, the next question that we have here, which is kind of following on from this one, is that if you're not self-sufficient in the world coming ahead, like let's say everything you just spoke about, I ignored everything you just said and instead carried on with life, decided that instead I was going to rely on government, or I was just going to keep doing what I was doing, didn't become self-sufficient in my lifestyle. Will I be able to survive in what you see coming ahead in the world? And if not, why do you say that? Or if yes, why do you say that?
So basically, if you haven't got some of this thinking in your head, you're going to be just a slave to the government system. You're going to well, shortages are normal, lockdowns are normal, government taxes are normal, all that sort of stuff. You can go back to bartering. So this is another thing that some of the guys in the prepper world is, they live on very little money because they barter between each other, right? Or they barter between the communities that they know. So where we're headed, if it pans out the way that I think it will pan out, having these skills is going to be like having a big insurance policy on your life, especially for you and your family, So, if you lose work, you can get an insurance policy to cover your income. Now, if you lose your job, you lose your life insurance or your insurance policy that covers that because the insurance company's gone broke. This is an insurance policy on that insurance policy. So even if say for some reason none of this ever happened, the world all of a sudden miraculously all the woke idiots one day just died, right? And parliaments were sensible again. Now I'm dreaming. I can see rainbows and unicorn farts and shit around me. But if that happened, you've got a set of skills that you can pass on to people, right? And having these skills and having this critical thinking is something that is no longer taught. And what we're saying is, and I'm not saying go and barricade yourself in a container underground, full of machine guns and ammo and canned food and pickling, and you go hunting for deer and all that sort of stuff. You can still live in the suburbs and grow some food and know where the farmer's market is and know where the fuel stash is and know where your gun club is and know people in your community and all that sort of stuff. You can do all that in the city fringes. It's actually better in some of the community areas because you're going to be one step removed from where the main shit happens. So if you have a look, where do the protests happen, right? So if you want to know where most of the trouble is going to happen, just look where the police and the protesters all congregated during COVID, inner cities, right? Because it's easier for them to do their job. It's easier for the protesters to think that they can fight back. Now, I don't want to get caught up in that shit because, to be honest, it doesn't get you anywhere. Has the protests in Victoria got rid of Dan Andrews? No. As the protesting here in Queensland, got better job outcomes? No. Right? So protesting didn't work. But that's where civil unrest will happen because those in the inner city that rely on government when government won't provide them services anymore will create havoc in the inner city. So if you're outside the inner city in a second-tier town or, a third-tier community that's, got everything that you want, you'll reduce the risk of being affected by this stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically it's like you technically you probably can survive, but then you'll most likely be a slave to the system if everything happens what economists are predicting around the Great Reset. You'll just be a slave to it. But if you are self-sufficient, you're just minimizing the impact of the potential effects. That's basically what it is, like an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, because like you hear a lot of people saying that no, you can't survive. Like they're promoting these big fear tactics, saying you've got to become self-sufficient or you won't survive, which definitely has its truth in some aspects. But I like what you said about how you can survive. Like you certainly can, but it just depends whether you're willing to give up your freedom to survive, and that's kind of the way I see it, and your morals.
Everything that we do in whatever life we have is a spectrum, right? You're going to have the ultra crazies at one end and the ultra do nothings at the other end. I want to be somewhere in between, right? So I want to know, and part of being self-sufficient as well is making sure you're not getting yourself on the police watch list, right? They're out there. Trust me, police target people. Police profile people. This is what they do. There's a whole department called police profiles, right? And they're building profiles on, people. They say criminals, but in the government's mind, the criminal could be anyone at any time. So so what you want to do is pretty much want to be you don't have to be anonymous. You've just got to be unremarkable. You know what I mean? You just blend it in. I love reading vanity plates, right? People that have got, you know, I'm a wanker or something written on their number plate, or, you know, Bridget 99. Because I just look at them and go, you're a target. Right? All you've done is made yourself a target. Right? If you want those plates, yeah, have them and stick them up in your bedroom. Don't put them in your car. One of the things that come out a few years back was young girls getting assaulted, right? And I forget what the actual stat was, but there was actually more young females that got done because of their number plate, right? That said, you know, Nikki 75 or whatever it was, than just an anonymous plate, you know, and that sort of stuff. And once again, as I said yesterday on the elite training stuff, is if you are not selling, if you're not positioning yourself, right, you're the product, you're the person being sold, right? So if all you do is go on Facebook and put shit up there about, you know, I ate a taco today, that is information that they have, that you've freely given. So you've become the product. If you go and buy a vanity plate, right, that's more information you've given the government than what they need to have. Right. So, and the other thing is when you're filling out forms, if there's boxes that say optional, don't fill them out. There's a reason they've put those on there, because I do it in all my businesses. I put a heap of information on there, hoping that people go and fill it all out so I get more information on them. Right. But really all I need is their name, number, you know, and I really don't care if their name's Daffy Duck. But people just freely give shit away these days. Don't do it. If you want to be self-sufficient, bit of grey, sit in that anonymous world or unremarkable world, don't give too much information away, you know. So.
Yeah, definitely. Most people try to just give their information away for free, but I think most people on here would be quite private in that area. I mean, I could be wrong, but yeah, like Joanne just said, Joanne and Tony, always best to fly under the radar, kind of stay in the grey area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, that pretty much wraps up for the background side of things. Like I said, guys, we've already got a few questions in the Q&A box, so we'll get to that at the end. First, we'll go through all of the practical questions I have, and then we'll get to everyone's Q&A, everyone's questions once we've finished, and ideally spend the most times answering your questions, because that's why we wanted to put this on, to really give you guys the information that you wanted to take out of this. So most of our time will be spent there. Just have a few questions that are more generic that I'll go through now to go into the more practical side. So firstly, the one thing that I was interested to know, because like most people will get into this stuff more around how to begin self-sufficiency and all that, but before you do that, is there anything you should watch out for, like stuff that certain mistakes people make, like common mistakes people will make when they're trying to become self-sufficient, whether it's certain actions they take that just aren't really necessary, certain mindset they have that's just not necessary, or like what's your thoughts on the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to this area?
Panicking and trying to do it all at once. Right. Some people just for some reason flick a switch and, you know, run into BCF and something and buy, you know, everything that they want to, you know, basically disconnect themselves from the grid and, you know, all that sort of stuff, trying to do everything at once. And one, it flags you as a crazy, right? So once again, you're outside of that unremarkable field. And two, you will never truly do it as part of your natural lifestyle, right? It's things like, so something that I do on a regular basis is when I'm completing forms, a simple thing like an address. I never, ever, ever give my true residential address or my true place of residence on any form. I give my lawyer's address, right? Or I give an address where I get mail delivered. So in Thailand, it's a central mail drop, right, which is a street address, right? And but so on all the forms it looks like a street address, but it's not where I live, In Australia, it's my lawyer's address, right? I use his street address for most of the forms. And half the time, I've been able to get away with utility bills, like mobile phone bills and that sort of stuff, where I've been able to get them in corporate names and then use that address. So this is another thing about being self-sufficient and creating that sort of veil, is get everything out of your name into a corporate name, right? Have a corporate or have an entity, have all your utility bills and that. So yeah, fair enough. You may come across some fringe benefits tax and all this sort of stuff. But if someone wants to hunt you down, well, why make it easy for them? And that's the same. So some of the biggest things, the biggest mistakes that I see all the time is people going in too hard, too fast without any plan, right? What is it? The 5 Ps? Piss poor planning piss poor planning prevents prior fuck ups or something. I forget what it is now, but look it up. It's the 5 Ps, I think it is. I've just forgotten it. But planning, that's it. Someone put it up there. Prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And that's what it's all about. So you don't have to go and do this stuff all at once. And most of the time, you'll have time to implement a lot of this stuff. And you can do it over an 18-month, 2-year period, mate. One of the things I really do like at the moment, and I never thought I'd say this out loud, is that the solar rebate scheme, right? And I've been thinking about this with some other guys that have actually got it. And they've gone, well, we've used government money to overbuild systems that make our house totally self-sufficient, that if the electricity goes out, we've actually got enough battery power and solar power to continually run our house. And it's like, that's actually smart. So they've used government incentives to create a self-sufficiency for their electricity needs, right? Even all under the skies of being, connected and doing the good thing and, believing in net zero. So there is those ways as well. But I would actually, so probably where would I start? Just trying to think back, because I've been on this journey now for quite a while. So one, I wanted to know really what I needed to live, right? I needed to survive. So start there. So as a single person, my needs are different to someone who, has a family of 4 and that sort of stuff. So work out what you need financially, what you need food-wise, what you need, shelter-wise, what you need transport-wise. Go down and work all this sort of stuff out. And then start planning it out and go, okay, shit, we need this, we need that. How can we supplement this and how can we supplement that? Then actually start going and having a look around at your stuff, because a lot of the stuff that you sort of buy and collect, you don't actually need, to survive. And there is 2 levels of this. There's surviving, which is just getting over the initial shock, surviving, resettling in, and then you can move to the next level of what they call thriving, right? So you survive and then you thrive. So you up the levels. So that's it. Really analyze your life, what you need, what you don't need. One of the other things that being in the inner city is when food and that gets scarce, security on your property. And I don't mean getting fucking electric doorbells and fucking cameras and all this sort of stuff. I mean, 6-inch, 7-inch screws that are holding in your door locks. And so here's a tip for all young players. A person my size, and I'm a svelte character, I can pretty much put enough pressure on most doors that I can break through them. Purely and simply because the deadbolts, the normal locking mechanisms are they're fine, but it's your door jamb. the little metal plates that they supply the locks and the shitty little, 3/4 inch screws, you can bust through them in a heartbeat. So what I suggest most people do for just, if you want to upgrade your locks without spending a lot of money, replace those shitty little screws with big 4-inch decking galvanized screws that are going to go right the way through into the stud behind, not into the flimsy little trim, but right the way through into the timber stud, because then it makes it very, very hard to bust down the doors. You see it in the movies where they put their boot up and kick in the door. Well, I can lean on a lot of doors and bow them in, just with a bit of pressure in that. But if you put the big screws in, and I used to do this, with all my places, even rented places, pull them out, drive the big screws in, get them into the studs. That's just a very easy thing that you can do tomorrow to upgrade your security. The second thing is put a bit of timber inside your window, because pretty much with a bit of alfoil, I can flick, it's very easy to flick the locks on a lot of the older windows. So just basic things like this that you can do tomorrow that doesn't trigger anything, doesn't cost a lot of money. You're talking, 10 millimeter dowel from Bunnings in your windows and all that, so that if anyone ever does crack the window, that it's hard to open. The other thing to do is go and get tinted windows. So you can put tint on your windows. You can actually get tints these days that are fairly strong and they're actually designed as a protectant, as a security protectant to stop the glass shattering and all that. Because what you find if you're in an older home, you might just have glass that's not even laminated or annealed or anything like that, so it could break really easily. Because you've got to remember, in every garden there's a key. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Every garden has a key, and it's called a rock or a pot plant. So if I really want to get into your place, I could get in. So just little things like this. Educate yourself, upgrade little bits and pieces and that sort of stuff, just to be on the safe side. Create the chart of, what do you need to survive, your escape routes. Do you know 5 different routes from where you live? Go to your farmers markets. This is an interesting one. Go to your farmers markets and find out that how far all the sellers are at that farmer market are away from you. And if all of them are out of town, they're not going to get into town if it's in chaos. They'll stay out and sell their produce wherever else they can go because they'll already have plans. So just things like that. Just take note of where things are. One that's come up, and this is where people are living this right now. There's towns in rural New South Wales, I think I said this the other day, that have no gas because the gas line was cut during the floods. And most of the people don't have hot showers or gas cooking because they don't have a secondary system, So do you have secondary systems on mains gas? Like, can you get gas bottles? Can you hook up to your hot water system through a secondary gas means or electric backup if you've got electricity and you don't have gas and that sort of stuff. So just all this little stuff that you can do, and you can do it slowly and slowly and slowly, and then it becomes second nature. One of the things that most people do is they drive the same way to work every day. So if someone was trying to work out who you were, mate, they can pretty much just sit on one street corner and keep taking photos of every car, and you soon build up a pattern of people that, okay, all these people live close by because they take the same route every time. So do you take different routes to work, school, wherever it is? So just you can start doing all these little things to improve your situation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I was enjoying listening to what you were saying about like the security side of things, because it's definitely true. Like, most people, whether you're strong or not, can just kick a door open, which is just ridiculous. Like, so it basically means locking a door does minimal of like, just does basically nothing. Like, I mean, yeah, I know I'd be able to kick a door open with enough force, and I'm not like the strongest guy out there, but I can do that. So yeah,
Yeah,
definitely upgrading.
in the security industry, a lot of the people that we used to sell door locks and that too, in the industry said a door lock is there to keep the honest people out. That's it.
Well, yeah, that's been what I've been saying for ages. Like, if you're a robber, like a burglar, and you're wanting to rob someone's house, how is a locked door going to stop you? Like, you're either going to break a window, or you're going to or you're just going to kick the door open. That's been what I've been saying. So it's good to hear you say that, and actually replacing those locks makes a lot of sense because yeah, it's something that my dad was saying to me a few months ago is that if there's food shortages coming in the world, especially for farmers, like if there's a mother or a dad that's out there and they're struggling to feed their own family, are they just going to sit there and take it? Or are they going to go wild and or are they going to like riot, go wild and just look for anywhere they can get food and even hunt people's farms down and try to break in to steal their food? So that's what you're saying. You want to have the best security you can.
Yeah, and look, from history, farms don't get so rural farms, anything over about 100 kilometres outside a major city doesn't get targeted. It's too far. So if you're at that point of a breakdown in society, it's everything that's within about 20 kilometres of the CBD, right? And because that's where people can comfortably get on foot. And it's also that they can probably get their car that far or some form of transport that far. Plus, you normally then start to run into military and militias. And so you don't get in. So if you're in a rural area, 350 kilometres outside of the CBD, you might not even know that stuff's happening, right? Because the people just don't get that far. It's not portrayed like that in the movies, but if you have a look at what happened in World War One and Two and all that sort of stuff, a lot of the rural communities that weren't on the major routes or they weren't major towns, you've got to remember towns become essential as well, right? So if there's a major breakdown and you're trying to overthrow something, you want to conquer a town that is essential. You don't want to conquer a little village that's got 3/5 or 5/8 of fuck all and it can just wait for horses. And I know where I'd want to be is in that village, not in that town that's essential. Right. So,
yeah, that makes sense. So the last question I've got for you before we go into everyone else's questions is you mentioned earlier about like not panicking and not trying to do too many things at once. Like we've heard that a lot of times before, as I'm sure everyone here has, not trying to do too many things at once, but getting started one step at a time. So with that in mind, if you had to lay out, in your opinion, the most important steps to take step by step, if you're someone new to this journey, how would you order that and where's the best place to start practically?
All right. So one is what I've said before, evaluate your life and your circumstances. Work out what your needs and requirements are, all right? So you can then start working that out. The other thing is go visit a library, all right? Shock horror, everyone on here is falling over because, don't libraries exist anymore? It's all online. Well, a lot of the stuff online is crap because it's been, doctored and everyone's trying to sell you a course or something. So go to the library and find some of the old survival books, right? Some of the home cooking books. So one of the things that a lot of people nowadays can't do is cook, right? So being part of self-sufficient is knowing how to cook the basics. Go and do a cooking class. Go find at a library the Boy Scouts manual. I've actually got a copy of it in one of my no, sorry, it's not the Boy Scouts manual I've got. It's the Baden Powell survival book, which was written like 1948 or something. and it's in one of my bags. Do that sort of stuff. Go and research some of the old things, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, the actual skill sets in our society have actually been lost, right? Most people don't actually have the skill sets anymore. And a lot of people that are trying to proclaim that they know it all haven't actually done it. Befriend an ex-serviceman who lives that sort of wilderness lifestyle, and there's quite a few around actually, and there's some of them out there from the RSL communities that will happily, take you on a survival course and do all that sort of stuff. So have the basics. One of the things that, and I actually, it's a good thing here. I actually don't have it with me on this trip, but I have a go bag, right? And when I get back to Bundaberg, where I left it, I'll probably do it. We can do a quick thing, and I can show you what I keep in my go bag. But it's everything from a fire starting kit to a space blanket, a first aid kit. First aid kit, a big one. Medications, both natural and prescription, but pretty much mainly natural style remedy type stuff. Low calorie food bars and that sort of stuff. So like you go to the shopping centre and you can get the Atkins diet bars and that sort of stuff. Those things pretty much live forever. But just have them in your go bag. Keep them there for a year, chuck them out and refresh them or whatever. Things like that. A compass, a torch, all these basic stuffs that you can actually put together, and things like that. Like guys in the States that I know, in their go bags, they have 2 handguns and enough ammunition to take over a small country. But just having things like that. Like we make sure that in all our work vehicles we've got first aid kits and breakdown kits and EPIRBs of all things. Because some of our guys that go out west finding stuff, if they break down, they might not see a car for 24 hours. So have a personal EPIRB on you and that sort of stuff. If society's in a breakdown, the EPIRB's not going to work. But in today, it may just save your life and that sort of stuff. So having all these basic skills can do it. So and that's where I.
Yeah, so Sim just asked, what's an EPIRB?
So an EPIRB is it's basically like a GPS that sends a signal on an emergency channel, and then there's a monitoring station in Canberra, and they monitor it, and it can if you're lost, it'll give you a location, and people can come and find you. They'll send a helicopter out to pick you up.
Yeah, and how about like dehydrated foods? Do you think that's a good thing to stock up on? Because I've heard that's a pretty good thing as well, because it lasts a while.
Yeah, look, dehydrated food. So on the food front, and let's address that, is that dehydrated food, tin food, is a stopgap measure in my book, because it's going to make you survive. It's not going to make you thrive, right? And if what's happening is going on, so some guys that I know in the capital cities, they have a survival kit that can get them back to their farm. So guys that I'm telling you during lockdown, they have the ability to get out of wherever they are, get to their farm, but it might take them 3 or 4 days to get there, depending on the circumstance and what's going on. So they've got a 3 or 4 day survival kit and survival thing that'll get them through to their next location where they can thrive. That's part of your planning. I would say it's step 3 or 4 in your planning is if all hell breaks loose where you are, what are 4 locations that you can get yourself to that would be safe, and how are you going to get there? It might be as simple as you blend in and you jump on a train, because you're getting out while everything's still going, but you're just not safe where you are. So you jump on a train, go to wherever one of your safer locations are, and then away you go. So,
yeah, that makes sense. So that's answered all my questions I had. So it's been really good to hear your take on that. Always good to hear a breaking down of where to start. So like evaluating your life, like what self-sufficiency actually looks like to you and where to start, actually putting a plan together, finding different routes to certain places, and yeah, just kind of teaching yourself the basics of survival, and also conditioning yourself. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is just really conditioning yourself to be able to think that way, and also just preparing your whole way of life towards that. That's kind of what I took out of it. And I'll get everyone to share their biggest takeaways after we go through these next questions that we've got here. So if you guys do have any questions, just put them in the Q&A box, because we'll go through them one by one now. And the first question is from Naomi, which is, what's the smartest, most effective step towards self-sufficiency we can take now? If you had to break it down to one step, what would that be, Stephen?
I can really only go on my thing, because I don't know your thing. If it was, learn some basic skills, right? So if you have no outdoor skills whatsoever, get some basic skills, right? And go from there. Create an escape plan. The other thing to do, if you're in an urban environment, is have an emergency kit at home. Do you have one now? Okay. If the electricity goes out, the water goes out tonight, do you have candles? Do you have a torch? Do you have a solar charger to charge your phone? Because you got to remember, a lot of the networks around are essential services, so they all have backups, right? And they can be totally independent and run independent for weeks on end, away from the main power grid. And some of them are on their own power sources. So do you have those basic things? Do you just have a basic kit? That's where I would start. Having a look at, pick one scenario that could happen tomorrow and work out the solutions for it. My mum used to hate it, because every time I went to her place, I made sure that there was batteries in the torch. She had a wind-up radio that she could listen to stuff on. I had a little roll-up solar thing that she could put on the wall and charge a phone, lock on the window, and charge a phone if the power went out, and I taught her how to use it. So,
yeah, that's good. And I like that. Choose a skill you want to learn and then go out and do it. Because for me, I'm like one of those typical city slickers where if I'm out in the bushes and then I have to do anything like relating to survival, then yeah, I'm probably the worst guy to do that. So that's a good skill for me to learn, I know. And I'm one of those like guys that when you see a bug, I'm like, nah, I'm out. So that'll be one thing that I want to learn, is actually mastering that outdoor skill. So that's one thing for me. I know if anyone knows what skill you want to learn, just put in the chat, because I'm interested to see everyone's, whether you think it's learning the outdoors type of stuff, whether it's learning shooting, like you mentioned earlier, Stephen, but what everyone kind of took out of that and what skill you're wanting to learn the most that's most suited for your situation. I know for me, it's more... Yeah, Joanne just says must have for that from your father. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm better than him. I'm better than him, I'd like to say, but yeah, I've got that side more from him just because haven't really grown up in the country. But yeah, I'd say I'm better than him on that. So, yeah.
Nice. Yes, let's just say that your father, city slicker, would probably be, too country for him.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So yeah, next question here is from Glenn. Are you aware of any places or communities in the Northern Rivers, New South Wales? You said you were near Lismore, where you can join or rent maybe a granny flat or second residence a self-sustaining place or community, or just generally speaking?
In the Northern Rivers area, there's a couple of people offering spots on their farms in the Lismore area, where you can go and put a tiny home. I'm not sure where they're up to since the floods. I'd go and have a look. I'm just trying to think what the other community was. There was another one up towards, oh God, the dope smoking paradise, Nimbin. Up in the hills at the back of Byron Bay, there was a couple of places up there where people were co-sharing land, and doing like community gardens and all that sort of stuff. But just look, the easiest way to do this is just get out, jump in your car, go for a drive, go to the pub, have a chat to people, find a crystal shop and find out the local hippies and, just find out what they're doing. So
yeah, definitely. That's the best way with communities, is just talking. Like my mom does that quite often.
Yeah. You go to the cafe and talk to the cafe owner. Most of these people will welcome, providing you information. So,
yeah, definitely. And next one here, I think I already know your answer to this one, but Pat asks, is it worth starting a business now or wait?
Should have started yesterday. And I'm not a big fan of starting businesses. I'm a big fan of taking over current businesses with current cash flow. Because starting a business, you've got a 95% chance of failure. If you take over a current business, you've got about a 15% chance of failure. So you reduce your odds a lot.
Yeah, it is true.
And they pretty much cost the same. It pretty much costs the same to buy a business as it does to start one. Actually, I'd even go as far as to say is that if you take over a business and you do it right, it will probably cost you a lot less. You probably do it for 20 grand instead of 100 grand.
Gee, that's crazy. Well, yeah, it's like, I can't remember the exact statistics, but I think it's like out of every 100 new businesses that start up, about 80% of those fail within the first 5 years. And then out of those remaining 20% that's past that 5 years, another 80% of that dies off in the next 10 years. So after about 10 years or so, out of 100 companies, you've probably got like 4 remaining out of them that survived.
If that.
Yeah, so it's just crazy when you look at statistics. I mean, you can certainly try to beat the odds and all that, but I like what you say. Take over proven models and just build from there. Obviously, you'll need to know the skills to do that, but you'll that's where you learn from the right people. So Joanne and Tony asked, relating to that question, is it worth buying businesses now, though, given the situation of the economy?
100%. Should be buying more, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm out there buying.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, it would obviously depend on the industry. I'm assuming you would say, especially if there's an economic recession, there's certain types of businesses that survive and certain ones that go bust in recessions or in tough times. So what type of industries would you be looking for businesses in?
I'm looking at businesses that are essential. Things that are needed on a day-to-day basis always. And solve a problem in a community.
Yeah, that makes sense. So next question here is from Christine. I think this is going back to when you were talking about putting your lawyer's address in rather than your own residential one. She asks, what about a PO box, putting that in?
No, because a lot of people and a lot of businesses and even governments won't take a PO box as your address. They want a physical address, because what they actually do is they actually look it up, and you'll start to see a lot of forms these days now that force you to put a residential address in, because they match it against the Australia Post database. or the ATO's residential database. Not normally the Australia Post one, and they don't accept PO boxes. Oh, sorry, I'm a bit weary.
Yeah. So going back to the business topic, like, what about a vegetable seeding business?
A vegetable seeding business.
Vegetable seed.
I'm assuming that's a business that creates vegetable seeds and sell them. If it is, yeah, that's a really good business.
Yeah, especially like with food shortages, if that's going to come and veggies going to like be essentials, veggies are definitely essential.
Three of the top wokey billionaires, Gates, Bloomberg, and Buffett, have all invested into massive seed banks. So that should tell you everything you need to know about that business.
Gee, that's interesting. Yeah, just always copy what the elite are doing, and if they're investing in seed banks, then may as well go for it. Like, exactly. They know what they're doing, so why try to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
And next question is from Glenn. Are you aware if you can get portable wind generators?
Oh yeah, there's heaps of them out there. Man, just do a Google search on portable wind generators, and you'll probably have about 10 of them come up. There's a couple of really nice ones that are coming out of Europe, Northern Europe. I want to say Norway, but I might be wrong. It might be Sweden. But there's definitely some on there. And there's, you can get 5 and 10 kilowatt ones that, you can set up. You can even get portable stream hydro generators that you can just throw into a stream and it'll generate power. One of the other ones I like, and I had one for a while, it's called, I think it's BioLite, BioCube. I'll think about it. But basically what it is, it's a thermoelectric charging unit. So you can actually, it's really good for camping or putting on I used to use it on the deck to keep, hot chocolate and that, or coffee warm. And you just put timber in it and it burns the timber. But at the same time, you can charge your phone and all that sort of stuff from it, because it uses I want to say piezoelectric unit that takes the temperature and creates electricity.
Yeah, that's interesting. So,
and you can power a light. You can power a little light off it and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So next question here is from Greg. Are there any countries that are possibly less affected by the World Economic Forum that could be a good alternative as a second location to live?
Any countries? Was that?
Any locations, any countries that are possibly less affected.
Russia and China. Pretty much anywhere in the Western world signed up. I like any of the smaller countries. Look, most of the smaller countries are going along with this, UN, one world government, is because they see it as an opportunity to get a shitload of cash. And they're all as corrupt as hell. But going to somewhere like Vanuatu, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, Thailand, rural Malaysia, Indonesia and that sort of stuff, they're pretty much not going to get affected, because pretty much what the guys are doing at the top level is just taking all the Western countries' cash and putting it in their own bank accounts. So, and a lot of that comes down to knowing the area, getting out and explore. Like, there's places in Australia that won't get affected by it. You get, as I've said on numerous times, you get outside of the southeast Queensland corner, outside of the greater Sydney area, greater Melbourne area, up into those regional towns of, 1,000 people, they were hardly affected during the COVID outbreaks. And if they were affected, they were obviously a town you didn't want to be in because the people there were dumb as fuck, you know. So move on. You know, there was heaps of places, especially in Queensland up north, that basically lockdowns. Yeah, that's what happens to the idiots in the southeast corner. So,
yeah, I mean, what about like places I've heard you mention is places in the Caribbean, like St. Lucia, Bahamas, Morocco, I think it is. Do you also think those are good locations?
Oh yeah, look, there's a heap of those. Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Colombia, in Central America. I wouldn't go to Guatemala. Belize is another good one. There is some emerging African places that are okay. It's still a long way off yet, but there is some emerging places, some places in the Middle East, like Turkey. Turkey is becoming a really good place in the Middle East, Georgia. So there is places around, but a lot of it comes down to personal circumstances and how do you get there, right? So one of the things is that people are looking at, especially in the US, is, all right, I'm going to go buy some land in Fiji or, you know, Vanuatu. How do I get there? Well, these guys are going, well, I'll just fly on my private jet. That's how I'm going to get there, right? Or I'm going to go on my boat. That's how I'm going to get there. There's a couple of guys that I've been working with this year who have moved their entire life onto yachts. And we're not talking small yachts. We're talking things 160 foot, 150 foot. We're talking big boats. But they're giving up residential on land, physical. These are Europeans. They're moving onto their yachts. They're just going around the Mediterranean. But, you know, if the time comes, they could just, you know, head to the Caribbean or head to South Pacific or wherever. So,
yeah, that makes sense. And next question here is from Joanne and Tony. What are some different ways of cashing in or using gold and silver for purchasing when away from bullion dealers?
Jewelers, right? So you want anyone who can get access to be able to break the gold down and then have all different denominations. So you can get like really small coins and that sort of stuff. And a lot of the times, if you're in a situation where it's desperate, you're not going to get the current gold price, right? So if gold was $1,500 an ounce, you'll probably get $600 for it, right? Supply and demand issue. You know, you've got gold, I've got cash, you want cash. I don't really need your gold because I've got cash, right? So it's a big insurance policy. It's a big thing that you can go. We found when we're in New York that some of the corner stores, because they're run by Pakis and Indians and you know, Asians, that they're actually a bit twigged on to what gold and the value of gold and that is, and they were quite often good places of exchange. So,
yeah.
Don't put it this way: if you're trying to sell gold, don't look for a white man, because most times out of 10, the white man has no fucking idea what the true value of gold and silver is. Right? Look for someone from the subcontinent, because they deal in it all the time.
Yeah, that's a good pointer. And next question is from Naomi. How can you be completely self-sufficient financially when you don't have full control of economic forces?
That's a good question. So making sure, so being economically thing is one, that you're not at the mercy of someone else's job, right? So you're actually positioning yourself. So in my situation, I position myself as a business owner. I own multiple businesses. I make sure they're positioned in essential services so that if the world does go to the shit and it's heading that way, that most of my businesses are still going to be needed. You know, we're still going to be needed to fly freight in and out of Aboriginal communities in Northern Australia. That's just happening. We produce, you know, energy, so that's still going to be needed, right? We produce housing. Housing's still going to be needed. You might have it on different terms, but housing would be different. Most of our shacky stuff is weekend, but we could quickly turn that into longer term accommodation, right? So just looking at different now, if the monetary system sort of crumbles, making sure you know how to barter, you know, and do you have inside your services, you know, people with tyres can barter with electricians or barter with food producers or whatever stuff, because their trucks and tractors are going to need new tyres, or they're going to need punches repaired, or they're going to need other bits and pieces. So being able to barter skills and all that sort of stuff is a way forward as well.
Yeah. And the next question is also from Naomi. What are your recommendations as to non-big tech internet and communication services to be more self-sufficient?
I like the written letter. I still communicate today in handwritten letters or typed letters and then put them in the post. So if you need to communicate with people, handwritten letters. Other than that, I really limit the emails. A real big one for me for running businesses, but on everything else, I limit. Pretty much my staff use my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. I do a little bit on LinkedIn. I don't use Messenger. I use WhatsApp. I don't use Telegram a lot anymore. I only use WeChat in China or dealing with the Chinese. Signal we're starting to use a little bit more. But, you know, shit, if it's really important and I need to communicate with lawyers, doctors, whatever, I'll just write a letter and send it to them, or have it couriered and delivered, especially if I want ultimate privacy and security.
Yeah. And what if you lost internet and mobile phone services from Naomi as well, redundancy?
Hand deliver your letter. I couldn't care less if the internet went down. I'd actually rejoice. You know, I think the internet really is a hindrance to some things and that sort of stuff. If it goes down, it doesn't worry me. I'll still get along. You know, I can handwrite letters. I can go and meet people face to face. The world will keep moving. Telephones, hey, there is still payphones in the world. Know where they are. You know where they are. You know, have a book. I carry a book with names, addresses, phone numbers in it. My PA prints out my contact list in Excel format and has that on the side in case we lose a database. So we've got physically something it's a backup procedure that we do already. So, you know, go back to the old ways. And that's what I said before. That's what I said before. We lived before without the internet. So just go back to what you're doing now. I had to laugh at someone the other day about the plastic bag thing that's just come out. The Coles and Woolies collection of plastic bags has turned out to be a scam, and everyone knew that. Well, if you had half a brain, you knew that. And this woman's going, "Oh, what are we going to do? We're going to get rid of this bag. This is terrible." I said, "Just use a box." You know, those of us that are old enough on here, and Ed, you won't be old enough, is that you used to go to the supermarket and at the end of the checkout, there used to be big piles of boxes. You know, you used to grab a box and put all your shit in that. or a brown paper bag from the deli on the corner, and a deli on the corner was a corner shop. It wasn't a service station. It was actually on the street corner.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff people worry about, all they've got to do is just look at what we used to do. Technology's only been around pretty much 12 years. That's it. Humans have been on this planet a lot longer than that. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, it is true. It's just getting back to good old-fashioned communication, and we actually got a few messages coming through in the chat about keeping stamps in Nadine mentioned in my prep bag is a box of stamps. So there you go, and also a list of addresses.
I just realised. Can everyone see that blue box there?
Yeah, I can.
Did it work?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, see, there's a blue box there. That has my addresses in it. That has printouts of addresses. It has banking codes. It has all the stuff that I need. If I can't get into online banking, I can walk into a bank and take the card that's in there, and it's got all the details on it that I need. It's got a handwritten note in there in a letter that has, my lawyer's details and all that sort of stuff. I carry that with me everywhere. It was staring me in the face, That information's not online. I don't keep that online. I keep that written down,
Well, yeah, that's good, because I actually remember one person I was talking to last year or something who came to one of our events. She was saying that a hotel she stayed at recently, their whole server got crashed or something. So they were having difficulty working out who's a guest and who's not, struggling to compensate for everything going on because they didn't have a physical copy printed out of their database. So when it all got shut down, they were running all around the place frantically because they didn't know your solution, since all of it was online. I think it was in a database, not like what you said you do with your Excel spreadsheets. They didn't have a physical copy printed out of their database. So it just shows you backup plans.
So when my parents owned motels and stuff like that up in North Queensland, and the online booking systems were coming in, they still made all the reception people write it on the big pad, right? So basically what it was, and this was a great Genius pad, they had it printed. Actually, I think you could buy them at the time. Down one side was every room, and then across it was every day. And then what you did is, as it was booked out, you just wrote the person's name and their phone number in, blocked out the days, right, that they're staying. Okay, they're here for one night. Okay, it's Jeff. You try and write it in, or you go, it's another note. It's number one, and there's a note column to put that in. Or if it's, they're there for 7 days, you write their name and that, and you put it in the online booking, the computerized booking system. Okay, yeah, it's double handling. But just as you said, if that system goes down, and we're living in a world now where electricity blackouts happen more often than what you think, and server crashes happen more often than what you think, so what do? You just sit there with your thumb up your bum? No. Make sure you got a backup system.
Well, yeah, especially in today's world where cybersecurity is a massive thing. Hackers are getting more advanced by the day. So one thing we're doing with GWC is we want to get all of our data, all of our website stuff and membership site stuff, stored onto some kind of device or something, so we have a backup rather than having it all vulnerable. So we want to actually make sure we have that cybersecurity protected.
So what we do in one of our businesses is the system that stores everyone's data is air-gapped from the internet, right? So we manually put it up in there and all that sort of stuff, and then a number is generated that goes into the CRM system online, and then everything can be referenced off that, right? And it becomes a bit of a cross-checking thing, but you can see in the information, especially when it comes to payment details, right? And data associated with payments. So a lot of the stuff that we do, we don't process the payments through an online system, so that information is stored out there. You'll provide us your details. Those details automatically disappear, goes into an offline system, like a sheet. We enter it into our system, process the payment offline, which can be a bit of a pain in the ass. And then a number of that customer is generated and put in the online system. And we do that because it came out of Europe. Europe's got some of the most insane privacy laws that if we were hacked online, all they're going to see is these random numbers that we correspond. And we got that from a Swiss bank. So that's how a Swiss bank used to work. So a Swiss bank, actually most of them still work if you go to the right ones, all you get is a 12-digit number, right? So whenever you interact with the bank, it's a 12-digit number. If they really want to find out who it is, they go to a card file, look up that 12-digit number, and then they've got your details. But everywhere else inside the bank, you work off a 12-digit number.
Yeah. And yeah, to finish this off, we've got 2 more questions from what I can see. So first one from Fiona is, in your opinion, is right now a good time to be investing in property?
Depends what type of property it is. So I'm not a big fan of single door property. I'm a big fan of multi-door properties and properties that have an industrial use or a food production use, because they become essential, right? The problem with single door properties, and this is just my view, my opinion, I know there's lots of people out there that have done very well in single door properties, is that your risk on one door is it's 100% of your income. But if you bought, a property that had 6 doors in it, all of a sudden the risk of having one door down or one door not rented, well, that's only 12.5%. So 100% or 12.5%. And, that's just a risk game for me. And I prefer the more doors, especially in residential property, the more doors. But my focus is property that is essential. Farms, industrial land. We're getting into the tiny home space because we can see that as a way of playing the multi-door property game, and we don't have to own the land. We can partner with landowners. So there's another way of getting into the property game, and not having a massive overhead of land. Land's really unproductive if it's just sitting there doing nothing. So we can actually create it, make it productive, and we can tow them away and put them somewhere else if we've got it. So.
Yeah. And last question here is from Sim. So, hi Stephen, I'm in UK/Ireland and emigrating to Australia to Wagga Wagga in January. It's about 70k population in rural New South Wales. Is it relatively safe from potential impending social and political breakdown?
Wagga's an interesting town because it's a government town. So in a way, yes, because there's a lot of army there. So there's a lot of military. The ATO has most of its base there. So from an economic standpoint, it's going to continue on through harsh economic times because a lot of the money spent is from the government, right? And we know that during times like it is now, the largest employer of people is government, especially the ATO. Wagga Wagga's been hit quite badly recently with the floods and the cut-off and all that sort of stuff. That's natural disaster. And it also got fairly impacted by the lockdowns and border closures because Wagga Wagga I think Wagga Wagga is the border town, isn't it? And so it got affected quite badly on that. Otherwise, it's pretty stable because, as I said, most of its cash is sloshing around from the government. Places like Townsville, Ipswich, Darwin, a lot of them are underpinned by government. So,
Yeah. So it's been about 90 minutes, can you believe that, since we started? So time goes flies when you're enjoying these conversations. But what we'll do now to wrap it up is I'm interested to hear everyone's biggest takeaway from today, because there was obviously a lot of points covered at the start around self-sufficiency, and then it kind of moved to a wide range of topics. So for me, I know my biggest takeaway was conditioning myself to what's coming ahead, just gradually, rather than trying to do it all at once, just gradually condition yourself and also learn a new skill. Those would be my two takeaways, and interested to hear everyone else's. And once you guys have typed your takeaway, I'd also be interested to hear like if you guys would be interested to do more stuff like this, because I thought this type of discussion was really good, doing a Q&A type of style on a specific topic around self-sufficiency today. Next time it might be something else, because I always like when we can get everyone engaged and you guys ask our questions. Like it's a lot different actually getting people to ask their questions compared to me and you, Stephen, discussing what we think people want. It's always good just to hear directly from you guys what you guys actually want to hear. So, I mean, if you guys would like more stuff like this, just put it in the chat. We can always cover different topics as they come up, and I'm sure the economy updates will kind of give us an indication of what's needed, and then we can always host webinars like this. So Nadine, I enjoyed the reminder to get rid of physical address location. Yeah, always important for privacy. Anyone else want to share your biggest takeaway from today? Aiden, learning and maintaining skills, diversity of options. Yeah. Naomi, bartering and trading within our community, having these skills / things we can trade or barter is going to be like an insurance policy. Christine, figure out what you need and start from there, and don't try to do it all at once. Aiden, blend and stay grey. Yeah, stay grey. James, having things in emergency physically, so cash, database, contacts, etc. Yeah, physical seems to be a big one, actually having stuff physically compared to online. Like people have got so used to being online that they just forget, like you said, people forget what the world was like before, where you can have stuff in physical locations. Like even I know you're a big fan of physical cash, and it's something people don't really do. Like I've actually started doing that, taking out just keeping some cash in some envelopes at the house to make sure if things go down, I have kind of like an emergency fund, as you've called it, to make sure you can cover expenses if the banking system goes down. So,
mate, I love cash. It goes with everything I wear.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard you say that. Like your general rule, I'm pretty sure is it correct that you say about you should have at least 3 months worth of physical cash to pay your expenses?
Yeah, up to 3 weeks. That depends on where you are and what you're doing. If I'm traveling, I make sure it's under 10,000 because that's the limit that you can cross borders with these days. But normally around that 2 to 3 month mark. 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah. So Joanne and Tony, stay under the radar. Brainstorming has been great, and interested in more sessions like this. Yeah, that's good to hear. And like usual, I mean, if there's any specific topics that you guys want us to cover, then just let us know, like on the webinar, or just send it to our support team, because we're always looking to host new topics, and kind of stems outside the economy update. Like the economy updates are great to get the update around the economy, but then if we want to dive deep into a specific topic, we can just organize separate sessions to like similar to this, rather than trying to mix it all into one economy update, because we prefer to focus that around like what's happening around the world and economy. So if there's one specific topic that you guys want to dive more into, then always feel free to reach out. So Sim, really good specific practical advice to bigger principles of how to develop your life. Yeah, that's a good one. Pat, don't stop learning. Joanne and Tony, you look good in cash, Stephen. There's a compliment for you. Billy Briz Vegas. Paper and cash kings, have always used a paper diary, non-Google. Yeah, that's good. Fiona, thanks. Great info, Stephen. Naomi, thanks, Stephen. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Seems like a lot of people took away some great things. Greg's biggest takeaway was the physical records book, nothing offline at present, but not for long. So yeah, that's a good one. Good action item for you to take away then, to move stuff more offline. So Glenn, different power alternatives. So yeah, we're getting a wide range of different learnings, but I think if I had to go off like just rating those comments, I think the biggest takeaways from today would be to go more physical. So that seems to be a common one, as well as just having your options. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to hosting more stuff like this. Well, like I said, guys, if you do have any suggestions, like topics you want to go more into, we can organize more stuff like this. Yeah, I always like just getting questions asked directly from people, like I said, because it's one thing for me to come up with my own questions, but to actually get someone like Stephen answering questions from you guys in detail is always good. For those who have listened to us for a while, pretty much how we explain our vision is that we want like the stuff we do for free. We want it to be helping like 99% of people, where people can come to these type of sessions and not pay a cent and get as much information value as they can. So like you look at companies like Google or Facebook, where you don't pay them a cent, and yet how much value can you get from them? Like Google's the hub of all information, and yet most people don't pay a cent to actually get that information. But yet Google is one of the most profitable companies in the world just because they do that. They serve the world en masse. And then you have the few people, like 1% of people, paying them good money for ads, producing revenue, sponsorships and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a similar model to what we're building at GWC, is just organizing sessions like this to give a lot of value, where our aim is to do something similar to that, where we provide as much value as we can to you guys. And those obviously who do want to go ahead with more in-depth stuff like membership packages, or want to go learn more education, get assistance with implementation and stuff like that, that's what our aim is. So make sure utilize this as much as you can. If you have any suggestions, reach out to our team. We're always wanting to organize stuff like this to provide as much value as we can. Stephen's always making himself available to do this and answer questions, which is what I like about it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot more of this. So thanks, guys, for your time. Thanks you again, Stephen, for your time. About 100 minutes, look at that. And can't believe it's gone for a while this long, but been really good. I always enjoy it. So any final words from you, Stephen, to finish it off?
No, look, if mate, all I say, and I say this all the time, if you've got one thing, go and do it. You know, the easiest way to improve is to do one thing every day that you didn't do the day before. It's as simple as that. The 1% improvement.
Yeah, I like that. Always focus on small improvements rather than a home run.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Steve. And thanks again, guys. We'll see you guys on next week's economy update.
To kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent.